don't think that there are enough two-player games. Companies always seem to go one of two ways: stringent single-player or proper multiplayer, Rocket League multiplayer, Dead by Daylight multiplayer, Fortnite multiplayer. I know that it is harder to get a pair of people into a room who know each other well enough to want to do this, or via online connection if they're desperate, but I often think these experiences can be really worthwhile. There's a lot to enjoy about the team building of a two-person game, the communication required, the mutual respect, or the lack thereof. It's something you miss out on with other multiplayer games, even if you're playing in duos. This implicit reliance on one another that I quite enjoy, that forces you to get to know each other. It is a respectable endeavour to marry gameplay and friendship, but you go, Hazelight. Still, I'm not entirely sure I loved A Way Out. It almost feels ungrateful to say, considering the lack of material available, but yeah, I just did not like it that much. I would not recommend it. A Way Out was developed by Hazelight Studios, the studio who then went on to produce It Takes Two, and man, am I glad they refined the formula in the later game. It Takes Two was a masterpiece of cooperative gameplay, and if I ever get a chance to review it, I shall do so with enthusiasm. But it was interesting to see It Takes Two's edgier, darker older brother try to demonstrate to us a dramatic, tense story that succeeded somehow in being fairly compelling and fairly not compelling all at the same time. The result was one of mediocrity. A Way Out follows Leo and Vincent, two prisoners in for reasons that became apparent over the course of the story as they learnt that the way out really was the friends that we made along the way out. Leo is a man whose mutton chops speak for themselves, and they scream for the sweet release of death every minute that man is flaunting his biceps on my screen. On the other hand, Vincent is what I imagine Elvis the alien will resemble in 20 years if he stays on the straight and narrow and avoids meth, but I'm not going to tell him how to live his life. They're two brown-haired white guys, basically. That's all you need to know. They both have their own backstories, their own lives of crime, and since nothing is ever so simple, we spend a lot of the game watching these backstories turn out to be lies in some form or another, and I'm not quite sure whether I want to spoil this game or recommend it to you, so I'm going to do both poorly, and you will not be content with me either way. As we learn throughout the story, Leo has a wife, Vincent has a wife, Vincent's wife doesn't like him, he's working on it, and together the two of them foster some degree of mutual respect and understanding, potentially in parallel to the players, or maybe that was intended but not necessarily expected. By the end of it, the inevitable fallout happens, and it's like 25% a shame, but I'm otherwise 75% ambivalent, no skin off my bones. There are two endings as well, and they're both fairly basic ones. One of them leaves the country with his family, one of them leaves his past behind, and no, thankfully not in a suicide ending way, just a different kind of way. Neither ending hit me particularly hard, but after several hours of co-op gameplay, I was too busy taking part in a several-hour, passive-aggressive tennis match of barely contained rage with my co-op partner, making fun of each other, and only slightly meaning it as a joke, and only slightly ever crossing the line, so I would forfeit the fact that I likely missed out on soaking up much of that gravitas, the ambience, the rapport, and I don't mean that in a bad way, that was half the fun. We meet Leo and Vincent shortly before they embark on their journey, their way out of the prison that they're in. I guess the thing that didn't work so much with this game in particular, that ended up being rectified very thoroughly in It Takes Two, is the fact that this game tries to take place in a very grounded reality. It's real world stuff, or as real world as it can be, and it just never felt like a tone that suited the co-op nature of the gameplay. I wanted whimsy, you know? No powers, no luck, no Marvel one-liners, grounded. This means that a lot of the set pieces became exercises in parkour, and when I say parkour, I mean that this is a fast-paced two-person game that literally splits the screen in half. So it's not parkour at all. It's running until you see the button prompt required to do the next thing on screen. It's a glorified QTE with some heavy breathing, and it means that most of the set pieces in this game come off completely stale. I remember jogging around some trailer park and later chasing a guy through a construction park, but there's nothing really here gameplay-wise of any substance. In moments of downtime between action set pieces, you'll often be walking around fields and along rivers and such as your characters talk and interacting with simple items such as musical instruments and toys. It's like a massive scratch and sniff, but without anything to sniff. Just wandering around, seeing a button prompt above some kind of doohickey, and then using it for a short animation and a few one-liners from The Boys, which is quaint, and like I mentioned before, the story is fairly interesting, and please don't overestimate the emphasis on that fairly. It's no life changer, it's just fairly interesting. It's not even exceptionally great, it's fine, it will definitely do. For video game standards, that's quite remarkable, since most video games have a story equivalent of trying to rub two lollipops together to make fire, but I would never recommend this game based on either its story or its mechanics. It's simply not engaging enough on either level to be worth a shake. It's just an unfortunate reality of story-heavy games. The story only takes you so far, but inevitably it needs to have somewhat fun mechanics. Both factors of the game are equally as important in my opinion. You know, it really does take two.